I was 26 when I met her. At first, she was just the piano teacher, strict posture, hair pinned tight, hands that moved like whispers. But there was something else, something I didn't understand back then. She didn't just teach me to play, she taught me how to feel again. Have you ever met someone who entered your life too quietly and left too loudly in your heart? I never told anyone this, until now. Her name was Emily. I found her number on a community board at the library. I was planning to propose back, then to someone else, someone younger, someone who liked loud things. I had this idea of playing a piano piece at the engagement dinner, something personal. I thought it would be romantic, meaningful. Truth is, I didn't even know how to play. She picked up on the first ring. Her voice was calm, like something from a rainy afternoon. It wasn't just the sound, it was the way she spoke, like she'd been interrupted from reading something beautiful but didn't mind. She didn't ask many questions, just gave me her address, the time, and said, "Bring whatever hands you have." When I arrived, she opened the door in a grey cardigan, a sigh, long dark skirt and soft slippers that barely made a sound on the floor. Her hair was pulled back in a soft twist, a style that looked like it belonged to a different decade. I almost turned around. She looked too elegant, too composed, too quiet. I was expecting someone who'd hand me sheet music and nod politely. What I got was a woman who made the room feel like it had a memory before I entered it. She led me to the piano room. It smelled like lavender, old wood, and something else, something warm. There were no family photos, no clutter, just music books, a plant by the window, and silence that didn't feel empty. She asked me to sit, I did. And when she sat beside me, there was something in the way she moved that felt practiced, but not cold. Like a dancer who no longer performs, but still carries rhythm in her bones. She wasn't what I expected, and neither was the way she made me feel, not in that moment, but in the ones that came after. I was nervous, my fingers stiff. I remember wiping my palms on my jeans before I touched the keys. They looked too clean, too white, like they were waiting to be offended by my clumsiness. She sat beside me without saying much. Her presence was calm, but not distant. She didn't speak until I did. When I asked, "Where do I start?" she gently placed a finger on middle C. "Start here," she said, "but only when you're ready to listen." I didn't understand what she meant, but something in her tone made me stop trying to impress her, or myself. I pressed the key. It sounded like nothing, and yet it stayed in the air longer than I expected. She leaned in to adjust my wrist. Her hand touched mine, light but firm. And in that moment, something stirred. Not passion, not attraction. Something harder to name. There was silence between us, not awkward, sacred, like the kind you hear before a prayer, or just after waking from a dream you don't want to forget. I remember her scent, lavender and old wood. I remember the sound of her slippers on the floor as she walked to the metronome and set it slowly. I remember her saying, "Don't rush the notes, let them speak first." The way she said it, I felt like she wasn't talking about music at all. We practiced scales that day, badly, but she didn't flinch. She never criticized, only observed. "Do it again," she'd say without judgment. She had patience that felt ancient, like she'd waited for students to arrive, not just for years, but lifetimes. I didn't know how to play, but I didn't want the lesson to end, because for the first time in a long while someone made silence feel like an invitation, not an absence. And I hadn't realized how starved I was for that kind of quiet. We met every Wednesday. She made tea, always the same pot, always with a saucer, always one sugar. I brought pastries from a different place each week, claiming I wanted variety, but mostly I was searching for something that would make her eyes light up. She let me ask questions about her past. Most people her age either overshared or refused to talk. She did neither. When she spoke, it felt like music, carefully chosen, lightly placed. Some words she let hang in the air like unresolved chords. She told me once about playing in Rome. The piano had been slightly out of tune. She'd had a headache from travel. But when the spotlight hit, she forgot the audience. "There's a moment when the keys vanish," she said, "and it's just breath." I joked that she could make anything sing. She didn't laugh. She looked at me with a kind of sadness, or maybe softness. I couldn't tell then. Sometimes we didn't play at all. We'd just sit, talk about books, Debussy, the weather, what silence meant. She once said silence is just memory waiting to be heard. I remember one lesson. I messed up badly. Hit the wrong note, cursed under my breath. She touched my shoulder gently and whispered, "Be kind to yourself. Music listens." No one had ever said something like that to me. Not a teacher, not a parent, not anyone. I left that day feeling strangely understood. And that night I wrote her name in my notebook, not as a title, not for a song, just her name. Over and over, like I was trying to hold on to something that might vanish. There was a rhythm to our meetings, not just in music, but in trust. I started arriving early. She started leaving the door unlocked. We didn't name what was happening, and maybe that's why it felt real. We met every Wednesday. She made tea. I brought pastries. She let me ask questions about her past. She never said much, but when she did, it was beautiful. She told me once about playing in Rome, how the piano was slightly out of tune, and yet she still made it sing. I joked that she could make anything sing. She didn't laugh, just looked at me in that way, like she knew something I didn't. I remember one lesson. I messed up badly. I cursed under my breath. She touched my shoulder and whispered, "Be kind to yourself, music listens." That night, I wrote her name in my notebook, over and over. Like I was trying to memorize her in silence. There was a Wednesday near the end. It had been raining. Not hard, just that kind of drizzle that blurs the edges of everything. I remember wiping my shoes before stepping inside. The house felt warmer that day. Or maybe I was more alert to it. She was at the piano already, playing something unfamiliar. It was soft, hesitant, like the melody itself wasn't sure if it belonged. I asked, "What is that?" She looked at the keys, not at me. "Something unfinished," she said. I didn't answer right away. I watched her hands instead, how they moved, how they paused mid-phrase like they were waiting for permission. Then I said, "It sounds like a beginning." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. It stayed on her lips like a note that didn't resolve. We didn't speak much after that. She made tea. I barely touched mine. There was a quiet between us, not empty, but full of something unspeakable. As I gathered my things, I hesitated at the door, my hand on the knob, her back still facing me at the piano. Then she turned. I stepped closer. Slowly, I reached for her hand. She didn't flinch. I kissed it gently, the way you kiss something you're not sure you deserve, not because I thought I should, but because I couldn't not. She didn't pull away, but she didn't say anything either. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, the room felt like a page mid-sentence. I left without another word. The door closed softly behind me, and I never came back. It's been 5 years. I never told anyone. But every time I sit at a piano, I think of her, not as a teacher, not as a woman I wanted, but as a feeling I can't quite name. She gave me something I didn't know I was missing, something between longing and grace. Have you ever loved someone in silence, just long enough for it to echo forever? If you have, you'll understand why I never forgot her.